Hi, I'm Keith Fogg. I'm the director of the Federal Tax Clinic at the Legal Services Center of Harvard Law School. The Legal Services Center is a place for representing individuals in civil tax matters who have needs. And the tax clinic is one of 5 clinics there, including the Veterans Clinic. So, if you have tax problems, I'm going to talk a little bit about what the tax clinic could do for you to assist you with those tax problems. We represent people in all phases of controversy with the Internal Revenue Service, starting with the examination. So if you get a contact from the IRS saying they want to look at your tax return, we can represent you in the process of that examination. And that's really the best time to contact us, because if we can represent you at that point, we can head off issues that could come up later if you don't respond to the IRS when they're examining your return. If you don't resolve the case during the examination phase, the next phase is normally to go to the United States Tax Court. Every year there's about 30,000 people who file a petition in the United States Tax Court, and 70% of them are unrepresented. We represent individuals who have a tax court case in Boston, and if you are such a person and you want assistance in your tax court case, then you could also contact the tax clinic. We're also one of 4 tax clinics in the state of Massachusetts. There's one at Greater Boston Legal Services, there's one at Bentley College, and there's one in Springfield, Massachusetts. So we're not the only low-income tax clinic in town that you might be able to get to assist you in these matters. In the tax court, we represent people, hopefully to settle their case. Most cases can be settled, but if not, we can represent people at trial. It takes about a year for a case from the time it's petitioned before it comes up for trial, and it takes another 6 to 12 months usually before the decision comes out. So that's the kind of timeline of tax court, but we could represent you at any phase of the case. If the IRS makes an assessment against you and you have a liability, we also represent people who are in the collection phase of working with the Internal Revenue Service. So, and this is probably, when we're dealing with veterans, I would say the most common phase in which we encounter veterans is they need help with collection, or they need help in filing past due returns. We do file past due returns for veterans, although sometimes we ship those out to partners who work with us. And we also represent veterans in the collection phase of the case. So if you do owe taxes, in order to resolve your case with the IRS wants you to file all back tax returns. So that's one of the first things that we do when we're dealing with somebody with a collection problem, is to look at what tax returns are outstanding, if any, and determine whether returns need to be filed, and file those returns as quickly as possible. But once we have all the returns filed and we know exactly what's owed, then we look at the person's financial situation. So we're looking to determine whether they have the ability to pay the IRS what the IRS says is owed. And many of the clients that we deal with do not. And so the IRS has a program called the Offer and Compromise, which can allow you to settle your tax liability with the IRS for some fraction of what you owe. In return for settling it for that fraction and making that payment, which sometimes has to come from a friend or a family member, you also must timely file and timely pay your taxes for the subsequent 5 years. So when we're working with people and making a determination whether an offer and compromise is appropriate, we're also having to make a determination as to whether that person has the ability to follow up and do their taxes for the subsequent 5 years, because there's no point in entering into the agreement if you can't follow up. But we do regularly have clients for whom we receive an offer and compromise, but we can't always do that, because sometimes the client has enough assets or makes enough money that the IRS is unwilling to compromise, because they feel the client, the taxpayer, can make full payment of the outstanding debt. If the IRS makes that determination and we can't compromise the liability, then we can work with you to get an installment agreement. An installment agreement can let you pay the tax liability out over up to 5 years or more, which may be what you need. You just need time to pay it out, and we can work with you to determine whether that's the best option for you, and work with you and the IRS to set up the installment agreement. And the third option that comes up in the collection area is something called currently not collectible. And that happens when the taxpayer does not have enough income or assets to pay the liability, and so the IRS just puts the liability back on the shelf, so to speak. It doesn't write the liability off as it does with an offer and compromise, but it doesn't continue to pursue the taxpayer in attempting to collect the liability. So in a currently not collectible situation, the IRS will just stop its collection activity. The taxpayer will receive a bill once a year reminding them that they still owe the IRS. But other than that, and the IRS will also offset any refunds that the taxpayer would otherwise get to pay the liability. But they won't take any affirmative action like levying on a bank account or levying on wages. So sometimes we use currently not collectible at the beginning of a case with the IRS when we're dealing with collection in order to get the IRS to stop collection activity. And then once it does that, we're able to assess whether an installment agreement or an offer in compromise is the appropriate thing. A lot of people come into us with unfiled returns concerned about whether they might get prosecuted for having an unfiled return. Prosecution of someone in a federal tax matter for unfiled returns is very rare. It's possible if you owe a lot of taxes. It becomes more possible if you are a celebrity or a tax lawyer or somebody that would be of special interest to the Internal Revenue Service. But for most people, failing to file a tax return does not result in prosecution. It simply results in the IRS, trying to get that return from you. Failing to file a tax return also has negative consequences to you with respect to bankruptcy. In the First Circuit, which is where we live, you can never discharge a tax liability if you don't timely file your tax return. So very important to file tax returns on time, and very important to file back tax returns, because many times our clients haven't filed returns, and when we do file a return, they're entitled to a refund, but you can only get a refund for the returns for the past 3 years. So we have the sad duty to notify some people that they have left money on the table because they didn't file their tax return on time. So we do work with people to file back tax returns and either do it ourselves or connect them with somebody else to make sure that it gets done. Another aspect of our representation can come in something called the innocent spouse rules. So if you are a veteran and you owe taxes that were incurred when you were married, and the taxes are really the taxes that belong to your spouse, in whole or in part, we can work with you to get the tax liability that was the result of your ex-spouse's actions off of your account with the IRS. So the IRS has rules with respect to, and the Internal Revenue Code has rules with respect to allowing an individual who filed a joint return and became jointly and severally liable because they filed a joint return to get out of that joint and several liability in the circumstance of divorce or long-term separation. So we in those situations, where there has been a divorce or a long-term separation and where there were liabilities coming from the marital period, we look to see if the innocent spouse provisions can be applied. So we're also coordinating with in the Legal Services Center. There's a clinic that deals with bankruptcies. We carefully look when we're dealing with collection to see if bankruptcy might be the most appropriate option, and we evaluate how and whether taxes will be discharged in bankruptcy in order to determine whether bankruptcy would be the way for the taxpayer to go instead of one of the collection options that I discussed earlier. So we're working with our colleagues here at the Legal Services Center to try to make a holistic determination on what would be the best way to collect. We're also working with our colleagues in the Veterans Clinic to look to see whether there are tax issues where we can help in the determination that's being made with respect to some of the issues that they're working on. So we try to coordinate with the other clinics here and to make sure that veterans get the legal benefits of every possible issue that might be coming up in their cases. So if you have a tax issue, feel free to contact the Harvard Legal Service Center, and if we can't help you, we will do our best to connect you with a member of our pro bono panel or with one of the other low-income tax clinics in the area to see that we can help you with your tax problems. Thank you.